Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with yours truly, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's episode is Jeffrey C. McDermott, President and CEO of the Allied Center for the Performing Arts. Join me now as I go on the aisle for a conversation with Jeff. Welcome to the show, Jeff. I'm so pleased that you were able to find the time to chat with me today.
Thanks, Tom. It's a pleasure to be with you, as always.
Okay, so for our listeners, it looks like you're in your office at the Allied Solutions Center for the Performing Arts.
That's right, in the Pena Mencius Palladium.
Yeah, I just noticed that recently, and as I was coming out of the booth talking to Civic Theater, I happened to see the name over the door of the new sponsor. When did that happen?
That happened about a month or so ago. So the two families, the Payne family and the Mencius family, have been generous supporters since day one. Eric Payne was one of our original board members back in 2010 with me when I joined the board and became the board chair. And Ron Mencius has been on the board for the last several years, and they've just really enjoyed everything about this place and decided they wanted to make a bigger commitment.
Okay, I thought it was a law firm, but that makes sense. So it's two different families.
Yeah, they're great friends. Eric and Ron are actually in business together, but this was done definitely and solely as two families that just wanted to make an impact and a difference here, which they've been doing for 15 years, but also to, sort of pay it forward to future generations.
So, Jeff, you've been president and CEO of, is that your correct title, CEO and president?
Yes, that's correct.
Of this Allied Solutions Center for Performing Arts now for how long?
So in 2016, when our prior CEO, Tanya Kesavarty-Moskalenko, left and took a new position up in Chicago, I was a board member and I was asked to step in as the interim president and CEO for a while. And then that ultimately turned into a full-time. They asked me after a while whether I'd be interested in staying on full time. I had been a practicing lawyer for 30 plus years and gave that a lot of thought, actually. And today I look back and I'm trying to think why it took me so long to decide yes, because it seems like such an obvious answer for me now. But back then, I knew how to be a lawyer. I was still training as to how to do this, but stepped in for a number of months. And then when I told them I was interested, they actually did a national search, hired a search firm that specialized in finding arts administrators. So I participated in that and ultimately was offered the position and accepted it. So I was the interim for about a year. And then since about 2017, I've been doing it full time.
Well, were your ears burning recently? I'll tell you why, because I spoke recently with Tanya. We did an interview from her. She's now living in Sarasota. You may or may not know.
That's right. My parents are down there. And so I've been following Tanya because I'm very familiar with their foundation down there and the Van Wezel Performing Arts Center. Beautiful setting down there.
Well, she gets to do down there what she missed at the Palladium. Your first CEO was there for a short time, and then Frank Basile was the interim, and then it was Tanya and then you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But she is like your first CEO was like, she's like right on the ground floor and she's like meeting with the architects and designers and all that.
Yeah, good for her. And it's a great organization down there and a great community. Sarasota is a great arts community.
She gave you a shout out on the podcast. You'll have to listen to it.
I
think you'll find it very interesting that she had a lot of kind things to say about you. And, I have been covering center from the very beginning. I wanted to tell you that my first interaction there was I had a hard hat tour with the project, and I was in that space where there's no seating, bare walls. It was just a skeleton. And I love telling the story when I'm there with the guests. I say, see up there that, what's it called? The top.
The Oculus?
Yes. So the day I was there with the project man, I don't recall his name.
It's probably Mike, I bet Mike Anderson.
It was an incredible interview. I mean, I got to see the thickness of the walls and a lot of the equipment, the acoustical stuff, the glass
Mhm.
up the ceiling and all.
Yes.
So he said, Tom, you'll be the last person who'll have a chance to go up there and the scaffolding to the ceiling. And I had to kindly decline because I have a terrible fear of heights. My worst fear. I couldn't go up the Eiffel Tower because of my
Oh,
fears.
wow.
Anyway, so I think, Tom, you should have done it. And I thought about that minute and I chickened out. So anyway, that's my big story of being there on the ground floor. And, I have watched its growth ever since then. And as you know, I covered it. I've seen so many world-class artists from all over the world there, and it's really been part of my education. And as far as I'm concerned, you all have fulfilled that mission you began. What is it, 11 or 12 years now?
We're in our 14th season. So,
Wow.
yeah, we're marking next season as our 15th anniversary season. So, first show was in January of 2011.
And I can't help but recall when it was first announced and what a huge story that was. And Jim Brainerd, former mayor of Carmel, who conceived it, as I understand.
That's right.
And I interviewed him once, and he said that he was really influenced by trips he made to Europe and his historical background, his love for history and travel, and just all sorts of things. And the fact that he's also a musician. And what an extraordinary visionary he was. And in the beginning, when it was announced, there's a lot of excitement. Then it turned into this controversy. Of course, you remember all of that, right?
Yeah, there's always got to be some controversy before people realize it's a
Yeah,
good thing.
they were calling it a white elephant, and people were really angry because it's taxpayers' money. Mayor Brainerd stuck to his guns, and look what happened, right?
I joke with people, but it's not really a joke. We've got 150 roundabouts in Carmel. And every time a new roundabout goes in, people complain about it until it opens. And then once it opens, they think, how did we ever get along without a roundabout here? And I sort of feel that's the way the LA Association Center for the Performing Arts is. I think at first people think, well, is this really going to work? And why do we need this? And now, 14, 15 years later, it's truly the center of this community.
You could see the development happening almost immediately.
I grew up playing baseball. One of my favorite movies is Field of Dreams. And this very
Yeah.
much is if you build it, they will come campus. It really is.
So what was your first exposure to the center? Do you live in Carmel, by the way?
Yeah.
Is that how it
Yeah.
happened?
I've lived in Carmel literally since graduating from law school. And so I've lived here since 1987. I think oh my gosh, the population of Carmel back then was probably 24,000 people.
It literally was a sleeping little village.
But it was in 2010, Mayor Brainerd approached me. I was essentially the managing partner at my law firm's Carmel office. So I had been on the management of my firm, and then we opened the Carmel office, and I came up here. And so I was involved in the management of the entire firm and then was managing that office and getting more and more. I was already living here in Carmel, and Mayor Brainerd asked me if I would be interested in joining the board of the then Center for the Performing Arts. And I remember my first reaction was, I'm not an arts person. Do you really want me on this board? And he said, well, we're not really looking for arts people for the board. We're really looking for people who are community minded, who live here, who have some business background, in my case, legal background. And I had just rolled off not too long before that as the board chair of the St. Vincent Foundation. And I frankly was looking for something new and different to get involved with. I'd served on that foundation for about 12 years. And so I thought, this will be new and different. While I'm not an arts person, I think this is a great thing for Carmel. So I agreed to do it. I'll never forget going to my very first board meeting. I think there were only 9 board members at the time. And I walked in, and the 3 people that I saw first were Raleigh Dick, Frank Basile, and Stan Hurt. And all I could think of was, what in the world am I doing here? Because these are titans in the community and in the arts community, but they took me in. They're all great friends to this day. And I learned a lot from them, and I felt completely welcomed by them, got to know the other board members, and just started to just fall in love with the mission and everything that happened here. So again, while I played trumpet in seventh and eighth grade, and that's my musical background, I fell in love with the arts in a different way here and loved what we were doing and creating and bringing to the community. It just
Well,
kind of grew.
prior to that, did you attend performances?
I enjoyed going to concerts. I probably tended to go to more commercial type shows at more commercial type venues than
Sure.
arts centers, like a lot of people. When I started here on this board, I bought tickets and started coming. I just fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the venue. I fell in love with the wide variety of musical performances we had here. There was just something for everybody's taste, which is unusual. You go to commercial venues and it tends to be pop, rock, country, and comedy, and that's all you get. And
Yeah.
here we offered that and about 10 other things. So
You've had a continuing education of sorts. I mean,
absolutely.
how many years have you been there now?
Total in this position, it would be 9, really, going on 9.
In those 9 years, you've seen some of the best in the world, right?
Yeah, no question. In
The
every
best
genre
performers.
that you can imagine.
Doesn't that give you a lot of satisfaction to have been exposed to all that incredible art? Hmm?
And I've gotten a chance to expose my children to it. I've got 2 adult daughters. I now have 2 stepdaughters. And these are things that if I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't even know to try to expose them to it, and I didn't really have this exposure growing up. So you kind of drift toward what you know. I grew up enjoying sports, playing baseball through a lot of college. And while I enjoyed music, this wasn't my thing. Like I said, I played a little trumpet in junior high and gave that up because I wasn't very good at it. I've joked with people that I don't have an arts background, but now I say, well, I guess now I do. I mean, it's only 9 years old, but I do have an arts background now.
Absolutely. I mean, as performing arts centers go around the country, you're at the top. So tell me about Jeff McDermott, the person. Where did you grow up?
So I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, originally. My dad was in a business with a company that transferred us around a little bit. So we spent a moment in Syracuse, New York, and then ended up, by the time I was about 12 years old, in Fort Wayne. And
Really? That's
so
my
I,
hometown.
where'd you go to high school in Fort Wayne?
Central Catholic, the now former Central Catholic. Oh, yeah, Central Catholic High. How about
Okay.
you?
Homestead High School.
Yay,
Yeah.
that's right.
Now, when I was there, it was a senior high school. And I think I started there as a 7th grader. So I went through 7th through 12th grade in that school,
What year did you graduate?
1979.
That's what you ask people who are from Indiana who live in other places. So where'd you graduate? What year did you graduate?
Yeah. I grew up there enjoying sports. I played baseball my whole young life, played through high school and then into college. I went to college at Purdue and I was a pitcher. And I would say around the time I was a junior or so, I took a look around and I thought, I came to college thinking someday I'd just be a professional baseball player. And I think a lot of kids, when you're 17, 18 years old and you're playing sports, that's your dream. And I got a little more realistic when I was 20. And I thought, these guys can all hit my fastball. And I know if they can hit it here, they can hit it at the next league. So I was a political science major. I got good grades. I thought I better come up with a plan B. And I took the LSAT and did all right on that. And so I went off to Notre Dame for law school.
Oh, Notre Dame, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
Two prestigious institutions in Indiana. So you are a boiler, huh? Yeah. And then Notre Dame, you were in the hallowed halls of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Loved it. You hear horror stories about law school, and I experienced none of that. I found the professors to be wonderful and caring and brilliant. And my fellow classmates to this day are still some of my great friends. And I had a wonderful experience at Notre Dame.
And are you also a fan of that school as
I
well?
am. I wasn't when I went there. In fact, when I got accepted, a good friend of mine from high school's father went to Notre Dame and he wanted to give me some mentor advice. So I met with him before I went off to law school. And he said, I predict 2 things will happen to you while you're there. He said, number 1, you'll become a Notre Dame football fan, which I wasn't at the time. He said, number 2, they'll probably make a Catholic out of you. And sure enough, they did both.
Really?
So, yeah. I was Lutheran going in and Catholic coming out.
It's amazing. We grew up being suspect of Lutherans, but many of my friends who were Catholic and Lutheran ended up marrying each other. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And of course, Notre Dame is, every Catholic. I grew up with nuns who we made us say rosaries before games. So I'm serious. You have a real Hoosier background for sure.
Yeah, I've laundered my Cleveland and Syracuse background. I'm a pure Indiana person now.
So what was your specialty when you were a lawyer? What did you study?
So I was primarily a commercial litigator, trial attorney, representing mostly corporate clients.
Wow. So were you a pit bull in the court?
I always told people that I was whatever I needed to be. I always thought that attorneys who were pit bulls all the time, nobody really took them seriously because if that was the only gear they had, then, so I always thought, you want to be professional, which I believe I was, and collegial. But if you have to get tough, you get tough. If you don't, you don't. I think that anybody who thinks that there's one gear for litigation is fooling themselves. You deal with a lot of different personalities, both for clients and opposing counsel and judges. And so you've got to be able to respond to all of them.
Were you relieved when you no longer had to listen to lawyer jokes?
My mom and dad will still tell lawyer jokes.
Do you have a favorite that you can recall?
Oh, there's too many. And I try to forget them as they come. We'll go on and something will come to me. There's too many. My parents were real estate brokers, and I think that I don't know if they were happy that I went to law school at first because they viewed lawyers as deal breakers.
That's hilarious. So how about, I bet you don't miss those billable hours either.
I do not. I thought 35 years of keeping a timesheet, in tenths of an hour, I don't miss that at all.
Every lawyer I've ever known is always like frowning because they're thinking about the pressure from having to meet those hours, especially if you're in a law firm like the one that you were in. That's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
It is, and it's never ending. You hit January 1 and you go back to zero and you have to start building up your billable hours for the year again.
That's what makes your story remarkable, that you have that kind of career that, Purdue grad was a left or right hand brain you had. And then you end up in the arts.
Yeah.
Symphonies and singers and the Great American Songbook, and who would have thought ever, right?
My mom, my grandmother loved the arts, and my mom's mom, and she passed away a bunch of years ago. But my mom just lives down in Sarasota now with my dad, and often says how much my grandmother would be proud of the fact that I was doing this for a living now. So,
don't you wish she were here and you could you could ensconce her in a box and she could see all that great entertainment. Okay, so let's talk about that entertainment. What's coming up in the new season? It was announced over a month ago, right?
It was announced. We had a private event. Well, not a private event. It was a pre-event on the 19th in the Palladium, where we announced 60 shows. We'll add to that through the season. We'll probably add another 8 to 12 performances through the season of people who aren't out touring yet or haven't announced tours yet. So we always leave some room to add some more. And then we announced to the public on May 20th. So it's just a little over a week or so ago.
So give us some highlights. I don't expect you to describe all 60, but give me some highlights.
I think.
And by the way, people can find it all on your website. So give that right off the bat.
It's at thecenterpresents.org. They can see the whole new season. And we've got every genre you can imagine. I mean, we've got pop, rock, country, comedy. We've got classical, jazz, songbook, family, international. We've got a series called our Encore series, which is a fun one. One of the things I've really been getting raves about this year is our classical series. We're bringing in the Royal Philharmonic, and Ray Chen is going to be performing with them. So I think that's a very exciting one. Chris Bodie's going to be with us again this year, who we love. We've got some comedians coming in. Jay Leno is going to be here in September, I believe. We've never had Jay here. We're bringing in Wayne Newton, who is iconic, and he's never been here before. I think our holiday series is always strong. We're bringing back John McLaughlin, who has kind of become a tradition, and Dave Koz. But, it's just, there's something for everybody. That's what I really like about this. We'll be doing free matinees again this year for students. David Foster and Catherine McPhee will be back this year. Michael Feinstein has picked his 15 that he's most excited about. That's in our brochure, and that's always kind of fun to see the ones that Michael is sort of highlighting for us too.
Well, and of course, it's of interest to me, but I am so gratified that I could see from your programming that you are walking the walk in terms of diversity, if you will. I look for it and I need to do some more research. Perhaps you can tell me about the young lady in the sombrero on your program materials.
Oh yeah, she's amazing, and she is actually one of Michael's 15 picks that he's most excited about. I mean, she's getting Grammy nominations one after another.
A Latina.
Yeah, it's a real coup for us.
And who is she?
Just a great Latin singer,
Okay.
amazing, beautiful voice. I think she's going to bring in a very diverse crowd to our venue.
Is she headlining or is she with a band?
I'm not sure if she's got a band with her, but it is her show.
And of course, everyone's got their eye in entertainment, performing arts on demographics. No longer is it you just throw a wide net. Now you really, as you said, you want to have something for everybody. And yet you want your audience to reflect the community. From my perception, how I perceive that's going on. I really love seeing that because I don't think we can be a world-class city without representation. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree. And one of the things I tell people here is, I don't want to just be a leader in bringing diversity into the city. I think we are the leader, and I think we've got a responsibility to be the leader. And when you think about it, we're not Acme Corporation making widgets. Our product are our shows and our educational programs. And when we bring in diverse artists, we attract diverse audiences, not just to our venues, but to our restaurants, our hotels, our shops. And so we have a passport series that brings in international artists from literally all over the world. They may be from Germany or Ireland or South America or anywhere. And we had the Ukrainian Orchestra of Lviv here a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And it was on actually the 1 year dark anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And it was probably the most people we've ever had for an orchestra.
I bet you that was an emotional evening.
It was incredible. There wasn't a seat available. It was just packed. Ukrainian flags and American flags flying in the hall. We've had Latin artists come, artists from South America.
I've been to many tango. I've seen tango, Sachi bands. I've seen it's remarkable.
Well, and then
folkloric ballet. Folkloric of Mexico, I believe.
What's fun is that people will bring their flags, and then all of a sudden you see flags from all over South America flying from the boxes and in the stands, and so people really.
And of course, jazz and all kinds of music representative of African American cultural interests. It's just been so wonderful to have that mix to be exposed to that. As you said, I think single-handedly the Palladium has helped to educate a couple generations. I think at least one, about opening up their minds,
Exactly.
And there's nothing like art to, it's transformative. And I love the fact that as a reviewer, I become more and more aware of what's going on, the division, the polarization. Thank God we have escapism, but we also find community when you're sitting in a place like the Palladium and you don't know the politics of the people on either side of you,
Exactly
but you're
right.
all focused on this beauty. And it's a great escape, but it's also, I think, hopefully it opens people's minds.
I tell people that all the time, that we are a divided world and country in so many ways, whether it's racially, politically, socioeconomically. But you're right, when you're sitting in a hall with 1,000 other people watching a great performance, you're all there for one common reason, that is to watch and enjoy and listen to that great performance. And for 2 or 2.5 hours, we're all kind of at peace and we're all there in common.
For me, it's kind of like church, right? Because it's spiritual in nature, the connection between the performer and the artist and the audience member. Yeah. It's magical, don't you think?
I agree. And one of the things that you see here, particularly at the Allied Solutions Center, is our artists don't just show up and sing and leave. They interact with the audiences, and the audiences expect it. They want the artists to be talking to them, to be telling them what they were thinking when they wrote this song, or the deeper meaning behind some of the things, or just sharing thoughts about life. You see Michael Feinstein perform so often, and it's the stories as much as the music that people are there.
If you ever taught a college course, I would go to that in a minute. He's such a great teacher in general, and not to mention entertainer. But let's talk about Michael Feinstein. I always point out when I'm interviewing folks or covering, the Great American Songbook is a passion of mine, and that has to do with having been exposed to what Michael has done for the city of Carmel, for the Great American Songbook, for show business in general. I mean, Jeff, I still don't think that people realize the coup that Mayor Brainerd, drawing Michael Feinstein to this community. I mean, a lot of people do, that's growing, but wouldn't you agree that his association with the Palladium and the center through his foundation is extraordinary, isn't it, for Carmel?
It's one of a kind. And, and Michael had options. I mean, he was looking, they were building the Smith Center in Las Vegas at the time. I know that they wanted him to bring his foundation there. He had opportunities, I believe, in South Florida. And it was really through just the dynamic of Jim Brainerd's personality that convinced Michael that this was the right place and that he could not only be a transformative artistic director here, but bring a foundation here and have a home for it here, and ultimately have a world-class museum here, which is well down the road in the works.
He was a guest on this podcast last year, and I love these stories about how places that become iconic and how they started in someone's living room or some office somewhere. He told the story about how he was invited to take a meeting with Brainerd through his people. And he thought, well, why, that doesn't sound like something that I'm interested in. But they talked him into it. And he sat at the meeting, and Brainerd did a presentation. And apparently he had visuals and the whole thing. And Michael was astounded, and he jumped on board.
I remember Erwin Helford passed away a couple of years ago. He was the founding board chair of the Great American Songbook Foundation, and Erwin became a bit of a mentor to me. I followed Erwin as the chair of that foundation, and Erwin was the CEO and majority shareholder of Office Depot. Very wealthy individual, very, very generous individual. He flew out here with Michael at one point to meet with Mayor Brainerd in Erwin's private jet. And I think they were wowed by everything the mayor had to say, and then got on their jet, on Erwin's jet, and were flying back. And Erwin told me that he said to Michael, it's a very dynamic mayor, and it's a really cool idea. It'll never happen. And Erwin used to tell me the story. He goes, boy, if I had to eat those words. He goes, by gosh, you guys really did it. So,
well, he wasn't the only one. The only one who thought that. So anyway, having covered the center since the beginning, I was really curious about your perspective. What is your perspective of what you first saw when you got exposed to the center and where you are? You must be extremely proud.
I'm really proud. I'm proud to say that I was invited to be a part of it at the very front end. I became a board member before we opened. I was one of the founding board members. I can't take a lot of credit for any of the things that happened. I was very much in a learning phase at that time. But I remember as a board member coming to shows and looking around and just feeling proud about what we were accomplishing here. We, as you alluded to, we had some bumps in the road along the way. We had plenty of naysayers, both in Carmel and outside of Carmel, saying, why would we think we could do this?
Remember, it's getting better. I don't know. I want to talk to you about that too, but the old Indianapolis versus Carmel thing, I'm hearing less of that. Thank God, it was getting so annoying.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing less of that. Even in 2016, when I became the interim president and CEO, I went to a couple arts functions down in Indianapolis, to try to get myself introduced around a little bit. And people would be very, very friendly until I told them what I was doing.
Yes.
And then you'd often get the, why in the world are you doing that up there? And what business do you think you have? But I think, it's not all gone, but it's largely vanished. I think people, and I will say this, Tom, it was never the artists south of 96th Street that felt that way. It tended to be maybe, some of the older supporters who just didn't like the idea of a startup performing arts center, but the artists loved playing up here and still do.
I think in the larger picture too, it took a while. Indy went through that, this whole area went through this insecurity where it took others to validate what we have here. And that happened over time when sports came in, the Colts and whatever. Right. But, that poor self-esteem, it kind of filtered out everywhere, people's consciousness about Anything new, people are so resistant to change at the same time, you know?
Well, and I don't think anybody ever succeeds if they're too parochial about things. I mean,
Gotcha.
regionalism is a real thing. And, the more regional the arts are, the better for everybody.
Frank Basile, he espoused that whole idea that, we need to think in terms of like regional and metropolitan.
Exactly.
We're all tied together. We're one big community. It's not us versus them. And, so I think the center definitely, it's the softer approach rather than trying to preach, to people. But
We're, I get asked often, because there are new venues going up, the Fisher's Event Center and Hendrix Live and other places like this. And people are asking me, am I concerned about the competition? Am I concerned about these new venues going in? I go, absolutely not. Number one, high tides raise all boats. I believe that, number one. Number two, we have our own niche here in what we do as a nonprofit and with the wide variety of programming we bring in. When we opened this place, Carmel had about half the population that it has today. There's a need for more. Nobody builds these big event centers and venues just on a whim. They're all doing their due diligence and have determined that before they spend hundreds of millions of dollars, there's a market for it. So I think it sort of validates things more than anything else.
my conversations with Frank Vasile, he said, you guys really did due diligence. You really studied the market. And so it wasn't as if that there wasn't a lot of thought that went into the process, big picture. But again, it's so gratifying to see what's been accomplished over these years. And so tell me about the selection of the artists. Who does that? Is it you and a group of people, or is it a booker? Who does it?
So we do it all in house. It used to be, before I came into this role, Tanya, our former CEO, and Doug Tatum, who's our former vice president of programming, did all of it. And they are great arts people and great taste in arts. We all have our favorite genres, right? Well, Tanya was a dancer, and Doug's favorites were classical and jazz. So we had some great dance, classical, and jazz, but we were probably too heavy in some of those things and didn't have enough other shows that were what I would call the revenue producing shows. And so when I came in, I thought the one thing we need is a wider variety of people making the programming decisions. So Doug was our vice president of programming, but we took about 10 other people. This is our product, so I put myself on that committee. And we had people from all areas of our business. So we had people from production and marketing and development and events. We had male and female. We had young and old. So we wanted to get a real diverse smattering of preferences. And I think that really improved things for us. We started doing more. We do two types of shows. We do what we call our mission shows, which are shows that aren't necessarily going to make money for us, but they're world-class offerings, world-class artists that we want to bring here. And then we do our commercial shows, also world-class artists, but probably more well-known to the public and probably more likely to sell. And I sort of learned this playing baseball in college. Baseball is a non-revenue sport in most universities. You need strong basketball and football teams to pay for the men's baseball and women's tennis and things like that. And so I sort of applied the same principle here, that we needed some more revenue shows to, the commercial shows, to pay for the shows that weren't necessarily going to have as big a following, but were important for us to do for our mission. And what we've seen as a result is, I think people were a little concerned at first that I was going to get away from our mission. I think we've seen exactly the opposite. We've done more commercial programming, which has paid for us to do more mission programming than we've ever done before. So you see more classical, more jazz, more songbook here than we've been able to do before, because we're doing some other commercial programming that's generating some revenue to make that possible.
So I would ask this too. All performing arts organizations are striving, some struggling to develop new audiences, like the symphony, of course. The World War II generation is dying down, so they have to do other stuff with their pop series and other things to develop those younger people. Are you intentionally focusing on that as well?
We are. If we know that if somebody walks in our doors, there's an 80% chance they'll be back. You just have to get them in here for the first time. In some of our series, we have a family series that encourages families to come with younger children. We do free student matinees to get students in here. If we just cater to people 50 years old and older, we'll have a patron base that won't be with us very long. And so you have to have a little something for everybody, not just musical taste, but of all ages. Our educational programs, this past year, our youngest student was 18 months old and our oldest was 92 years old. So truly something for everyone.
Let's talk about Michael Feinstein's Great American Songbook Foundation. And from that stems a bunch of cool stuff like the Songbook Academy.
Oh, yeah.
But for those who aren't familiar with, and there's still a lot of people out there, what's the Great American Songbook? So talk about that.
A lot of people think the Great American Songbook is a book, and it's not. There's different people who define it different ways, but we actually think we're sort of becoming the Great American Songbook Foundation, which is our foundation, and it's an affiliate organization of the Allied Solutions Center. I actually serve as the president and CEO of both organizations. We define the songbook as music that remains relevant for 25 years or more. So it's not just the standards, the Gershwins and the Cole Porters and Frank Sinatra. It's not just that, although it's that music that needs to be most preserved because most of that music was created on media that is decaying. Albums fall apart and tape falls apart. And so we take a lot of that and digitize it to preserve it. But, by our definition, Billy Joel is part of the American song.
Anything that withstands the test of time.
Exactly. And it's storytelling.
And that it's still being written.
And when you think about it, and that it relates to a point in history of this country, music in the 60s, a lot of it was a sort of protest music. Well, that relates to a part of American history at that time. As you go through the 70s and 80s, you stop and think, my songbook, because of my age, is from the 70s. So Carole King and people like that, James Taylor, I would argue that those are songbook artists.
And I'm from the Beatles era. So.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of if it was George Gershwin or who was it said music makes history and history makes music. I mean, because music really does follow what's happening at any given time.
And Michael is known as the ambassador of the Great American Songbook. Explain what that means.
Michael has forgotten more about the songbook than I will ever know. He is a savant when it comes to this, and he's lived it. I mean, Michael is 68 years old, but he has had the life experience of someone who's 200 years old. He left Columbus, Ohio at age 20 and made his way out to California and became the personal assistant to Ira Gershwin, for goodness sake, where he developed a love for collecting and the ephemera of the music, and he has had personal relationships with Rosemary Clooney and Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett and writers and lyricists. I mean, it's just an amazing, and he's got a capacity to remember everything.
Photographic memory. And by the way, I wrote a review of his last concert with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. And of course, I wrote that, basically, and I meant this in the most positive way, that it was a big promotion for the foundation. Intentional, it would seem, but
it was a 2.5-hour commercial for the foundation. It really
was. Exactly. But look at all the content that he included. It's just remarkable. But I said something, I can't even remember what I wrote, but something along the lines, he sounds like a name dropper, but he knows all these people or knew them. They're a part of his life, So it's not some superficial thing. It's incredible. I think he also intentionally wanted to know these people because of their many colleagues. And, he wanted to surround himself with the greatness and became great himself.
He's maybe told the story that he was asked when he was in his early 20s and working for Ira Gershwin. He was also making some other money as a piano player in different places. He was asked to come play some music for a group of guys who just wanted to get together and smoke cigars and drink bourbon. Well, it turned out to be the Rat Pack. And he had learned a bunch of Frank Sinatra, more obscure Frank Sinatra tunes. And so he was just playing in the corner some of these tunes. And Frank noticed and came over and said, "How in the world do you know that song?" And he goes, "Well, I've studied it." But, Michael doesn't play with music either. It's all in his head, which is also amazing. When he plays with an orchestra, the entire orchestra has sheet music, and Michael's just got it all in his head. An amazing talent.
Yes. Savant, you called him, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's certainly the case. Now we got a little bit more time, but tell me about this. Another thing that people have no idea what's about to happen with the Hall of Fame. When are you all breaking ground?
We don't know that yet. We've acquired the land through a 50-year lease with the city of Carmel, which is just to the north of the Palladium. So it's on the other side of City Center Drive.
Is that where that winter market is now?
Yes. So it's Solano 1 and the building to the north of it where they hold the winter market. So it's about a 4-acre plot.
Mm-hmm.
So those two buildings, the tenants of those buildings, Solano 1 tenant is building its own new building. It'll be about 3 years before they're ready to even move out. We're doing a lot of the legwork now, the feasibility studies, the architectural renderings, raising the money so that in 3 or 4 years we'll be ready to break ground, would be my goal.
And of course, you're in partnership with the Grammy
Yes.
Museum.
Yes, we're an affiliate of the Grammy Museum Foundation, one of only 5 or 6 in the world. And they're helping us with a lot of the ideation for this museum. They have a number of museums around the country that, they've helped to literally build from the dirt up. And so it's a great relationship.
And I had the great pleasure of touring. I interviewed Chris Lewis, and he gave me a tour of the warehouse
Yeah.
nearby. And I got to hold someone's Oscar and got to see Ella Fitzgerald's gowns and just pianos.
We've got a lot of pianos.
But, he's still rooting around in people's attics and cellars, right?
Michael never stops with Michael's interest in this, but also with the growth and stature of the Great American Songbook Foundation. We get the calls now. We believe that we're the second largest repository of this type of information and ephemera of any place in the world other than the Library of Congress. The difference between us and them is everything we have is accessible. The Library of Congress stores it. We digitize it and make it all accessible to researchers, scholars, anybody.
So for people who have not yet discovered the Center for the Performing Arts, here's a theme that I often am interested in talking to folks about the arts, administrators especially. I know that it's always a discussion when you're talking about developing new audiences. What do you say to people who see that? And by the way, I don't think it's just a Hoosier thing. I think it's just a lot of people around the country who use the word fancy. Fancy meaning, what does fancy mean? Well, there are people who think that maybe like the Palladium is so fancy, it's like a recreation of a building in Greece. Is that true? Or is it
Italy, I believe.
Italy, yeah. But it's so imposing. And the inside, to some, it's imposing because it's so grand. But what do you say to people who have this notion that to enter these buildings, you got to behave a certain way, you got to be dressed a certain way, or people are not going to be nice to you because you don't belong there for whatever, all of that stuff. What do you say to people like that? Just regular Joes who've never been to the center?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I will have people call me or ask me from time to time, "Hey, I'm coming to my first show. What's the dress code?" And I will say cargo shorts, whatever you want. I tell people, if you're coming to a classical show, people dress up a little bit more. If you're coming to a pop rock show, it's probably going to be black Led Zeppelin t-shirts. If you're coming to a country show, it's probably going to be cowboy boots and cowboy hats. There is no dress code. We want people to be comfortable. We have a 300-person volunteer corps of ushers. We get raves about them and how friendly and how helpful they are. Our box office, we get raves about how friendly, how patron friendly they are. It is a very clean environment. Our artists always rave about the hall itself, the beauty of it, the cleanliness of it.
That's always remarkable. And I've seen some of the biggest names in show business compliment the hall. and the personnel and everybody backstage who
Yeah.
takes care of them. And that seems to be a theme. And I'm sure you guys, it was a conscious effort. Customer service.
I tell people we've got to have a Disney attitude here. There's a story that Walt Disney used to walk around Disneyland, and if he'd see some garbage on the ground, he wouldn't tell somebody to pick it up. He'd go pick it up and throw it away. And I do that, and anybody else here does it. This place is, we're trustees of it, and we need to take care of it, and we need to take care of our customers. Just yesterday, we had a function here, and there was a woman who was confined to a wheelchair, and it was raining, and the only place she could find a park was over across the Carter Green in the Tarkington parking garage. And so she parked over there and then got a little confused as to where she was going. And we had one of our employees was over there, and she said, can you point me in the direction where I'm going? And she goes, well, you're going to need to go across the green and over there. She goes, I'll go with you. And she grabbed an umbrella and just brought her over. And then the meeting that she was coming to, it was a presentation she was 10 minutes late for. And she said, well, I'm not sure I want to go in. I'll feel uncomfortable going in by myself. And our employee said, I'll go in and sit with you. And we
Oh,
took her in and just tried to just making her feel as comfortable as she could. And that's not the exception. That's the rule here. I mean, everybody is that way.
I hear this often. But I know the person that was hired, she told me she created her own job, and that would have been Ellen Kingston, your
That's right.
former concierge. Do you have a new concierge? Did someone replace her?
Karen Knotts is our primary artist concierge who really trained under Ellen. Ellen hired her.
I know her, yes.
Ellen retired, but still does some special projects for us and is a dear, dear friend of everybody here. And then we have several other part-time artist concierge. But Ellen came up with the idea and came and sold it to our first CEO that we needed that as a position and that she was the person to do it. And she did it.
Well, think of a concierge in a big fancy hotel. Whatever people needed, she would find it, or she would find someone who could find it. And boy, I can't wait to read her book. She claims that she's going to write one someday.
Yeah, she's got some great stories to tell. She's probably going to have to jump through a few legal hoops on a couple of them, but
Oh, yeah.
has some great
Yeah.
stories to tell.
Well, it's been great talking to you again. I feel some ownership and investment in the center just because I've spent so much time there. You know what? We didn't even get to talk about it. That's another show, but just briefly describe the other partners, if you will, who are housed in the center. It's not just
Sure.
a stadium, it's a campus.
Yeah, it's a campus with 3 venues, and we've got 6 resident companies who are all outstanding, 2 theater companies, 2 orchestral companies, and 2 dance companies. Carmel Civic Theater and Actors Theater of Indiana are here. Gregory Hancock Dance Theater and Central Indiana Dance Ensemble are here. The Carmel Symphony is here, and Indiana Wind Symphony are all here. We actually provide them all with free rent. So they perform here. They don't pay rent. That's something that we provide for them. They bring tens of thousands of people to our venues on their own. And just, we have great relationship with all of them and couldn't be doing what we do here without them.
And of course, we couldn't talk about that center unless we talked about the whole picture. And they've also been a part of educating in, central Indiana
That's right.
and being a window into the world, right?
They all have their own education programs. They all have their own followings. Yeah. So again, this campus is everybody's campus. And you talk about the grandeur of the building. And I always hope that doesn't, I tell people they think from the outside it looks maybe almost cathedral-like, but I think when they come in, they'll find it's a very welcoming place and it's a beautiful place. And the place itself is part of the experience.
Well, I happen to think because I believe that the arts, performing arts, have a spiritual quality that it needs to be in a building like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, we all like to go to an occasional outdoor concert and things like that too.
sure.
But when you come here and you're sitting in this kind of environment and listening to the quality of sound you're listening to and the intimacy of the venue, it's hard to beat.
What do you think of the Christmas market and its success? And does that hamper you guys?
I think anything that brings people to this campus is good for us. It creates some challenges. They're busy when we're busy. The holiday season's a busy time for us also, and we could have 3 performances going on in 3 venues with thousands of people outside at the market, and that can create some congestion. But we've had a great relationship with the Chris Kindle Mart, and I would expect that will continue.
And lastly, I love those, I don't know what they're called, those beautiful projections on the facade.
The Palladioscope.
Is that drawing crowds?
It's such a unique thing. The city runs that and they change up the images and the videos. It's always fun to come out of a show, particularly in the summer when it gets dark later. So you come out of a show at maybe 10 o'clock and all of a sudden there's another show going on outside right on the face of the Palladium. And it's beautiful.
So, having moved from the law to arts and entertainment, performing arts, so what do you make of this in your life? In the final analysis.
I keep hoping I don't wake up and find out it was all a dream. I don't know anybody that has had the kind of good fortune I've had to have two completely different careers and love both of them. I loved practicing law. People ask me, did you just not like practicing? I loved practicing law, but I was done. And it wasn't new to me anymore. This is something new and different every day. And I really enjoy that. It's the perfect second career that anybody could ask for.
It's been a pleasure getting to know you better. We've been acquaintances for a long time, but I was really looking forward to hearing the whole story. And I think we pretty much covered everything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Great being with you, Tom. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Take care.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official newsletter for 15 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community. Thank you for joining me on the aisle. Please subscribe to my podcast, and if you want to hear previous episodes, find them on the All Indiana Podcast Network, or listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. This is Tom Alvarez.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.